All right, you ready for this? We've got ourselves a brand new resident up on the moon.
Not a person, though. Not yet, at least.
True? Not yet. But Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost lander, it just pulled off one heck of a landing.
And on its first try, too. Touchdown right near Mons Trail. That's a volcanic peak in Mare Crisium. It's pretty remarkable. Firefly is now only the second private company to ever, soft land on the moon.
Seriously impressive.
Yeah.
I was glued to that live stream, by the way. When they finally confirmed touchdown, Firefly CEO Jason Kim, he said, "We got some moon dust on our boots."
Haha, I love that.
Right. So tell me, what can we learn about this little blue ghost?
Well, it's not that big, about 6.6 feet tall and then 11.5 feet wide. The design really focuses on stability. They looked closely at all those past missions, the successes and the failures, to make absolutely sure this one would nail the landing.
And nail it did.
Ugh.
But before we dive into all the science-y stuff, can we rewind a bit? Blue Ghost, it hitched a ride on a SpaceX Falcon 9 back in January, didn't it?
That's right, January 15th to be exact.
I saw some of the pictures it sent back during the trip. Absolutely stunning.
More than just pretty pictures, though. They actually give us some valuable info about the lunar environment. That whole trip was part of NASA's CLPS initiative. You familiar with that?
CLPS, that stands for Commercial Lunar Payload Services, right?
Exactly.
So fill me in. What's the big idea here with CLPS, affordable exploration, all that?
Honestly, it's a brilliant move by NASA. Instead of them taking on all the costs and all the risks themselves, they're teaming up with private companies, like Firefly. This way they can do more lunar exploration with the same budget, plus it encourages innovation in the private sector.
So win-win all around. Now, I've heard that Blue Ghost is packed with scientific instruments, like 10 of them in total.
10, that's right. There's a lunar soil analyzer, to study what the regolith is made of, a radiation-tolerant computer, they call it RAD-PC.
RAD-PC, huh?
Yeah.
So even computers need extra protection up on the moon.
You got it. And get this, they've even got an X-ray telescope on board.
Oh, wow, that's just cool. So what kind of experiments is Blue Ghost going to be running with all that fancy equipment? It's got about 14 days, one lunar day, right?
Yeah.
To get everything done before the sun sets.
Yep, that's right. One of the coolest experiments has got to be LISTER. It stands for Lunar Instrumentation for Subsurface Thermal Exploration with Rapidity.
LISTER, that's quite a mouthful. So what does it actually do?
Well, LISTER, it's going to drill down into the moon's surface to measure how much heat is flowing from the inside. Just imagine the engineering challenge, right? Building a drill that can actually work on the moon.
No kidding. I can't even imagine.
But here's what's really exciting. The data from LISTER, it could tell us just how volcanically active the moon still is. That has a big impact on how we understand its evolution and even its potential resources.
Wow, so the moon's not just a big dead rock hanging up there.
Not at all. It's way more dynamic than you might think. And honestly, we're just starting to scratch the surface, literally.
Okay, so what else is on Blue Ghost's to-do list?
Well, there are stereo cameras on board. They'll study how the landing itself disturbed the lunar regolith, the moon dust. They're looking at the tiniest details because even those can have huge implications for future missions, especially if we're thinking about, building stuff on the moon someday.
Makes sense. We were talking about building on the moon earlier. You mentioned that X-ray telescope. What will it be focusing on?
That's called the Lunar Magnetotelluric Sounder. It's going to map the geology of the moon, but hundreds of miles below the surface.
Wow.
It's kind of like, imagine a doctor using an MRI to see inside the body. In this case, we're peeking deep inside the moon, looking for hidden structures and trying to understand how it formed.
So we've got a drill, a dust buster, and now a giant moon MRI. Anything else?
Oh, there's more. One experiment's going to test how well lunar regolith sticks to other materials. That's vital information for building potential moon bases. If we want to use lunar regolith as a building material, we need to know if it will actually work right.
Now, that would be incredible. Lunar architecture using moon dust. Sounds straight out of science fiction. But who knows? Maybe it's our future.
And speaking of building on the moon, all of this ties into NASA's Artemis program, the one that aims to set up a long-term human presence on the moon.
It's wild to think that this little lander plays a role in such a massive step for humanity.
It really is. All this data from Blue Ghost, it's going to be crucial for Artemis, helping NASA get ready for those missions, making them safer and more effective. It's just imagine everything from figuring out the lunar environment to figuring out how to use resources we find there. It's all connected.
Yeah, it's all about making those future Artemis missions, as safe and as informed as possible. And there's one more thing Blue Ghost is going to do that I'm really excited about.
Oh, what's that?
Well, it's going to take pictures of two really special events A total lunar eclipse on March 14th, and then the lunar sunset on March 16th. Wow, that's like a front row seat to some amazing cosmic shows. I'd love to see that myself.
Yeah.
But besides just how cool they are, what kind of science can we get from these events?
Okay, so the eclipse, that gives us a chance to study how the moon's surface reacts when it's suddenly plunged into Earth's shadow, the change in light and temperature and all that. For a short time, the only light hitting the moon will be what's filtering through Earth's atmosphere, so it's pretty unique.
That's fascinating. And what about the lunar sunset? We talked about how the landing kicks up all that dust. Does that play a role here too?
Absolutely. Remember we mentioned Eugene Cernan, the Apollo 17 astronaut? He noticed that the moon dust seemed to act kind of weird during sunset, almost like it was levitating, creating a sort of glowing halo around the
Oh
horizon.
yeah, I remember reading about that. It sounded almost magical.
It's a phenomenon we still don't totally get. Blue ghosts observations, they'll help scientists figure out what's causing it. And this is crucial because if we're serious about building bases and having people live on the moon, we need to know how to handle this dust, right? It could be a real pain, even a hazard, if we don't understand it.
It's like the ultimate dust bunny problem, but with way higher stakes. So Blue Ghost is helping us figure out how to deal with moon dust storms.
You could say that, yeah. But it's not alone up there. Intuitive Machines Athena lander. That's scheduled to land on March 6th.
So things are about to get a bit more crowded up on the moon. It feels like we're at this turning point for lunar exploration with private companies taking on more and more responsibility. It's all really exciting stuff, but I gotta ask, why should we care about what's happening up on the moon? How does any of this affect us back here on Earth?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's not just about planting flags and bragging rights. By understanding the moon better, we actually understand our own planet's history better. They're pretty closely connected, you see.
So it's like looking back in time, using the moon as a window to understand our own planet's past.
Exactly. The moon holds clues about the early solar system, how planets form, maybe even how life itself got started. It's like a cosmic archive just waiting for us to explore it.
Wow, when you put it that way, it makes those dusty plains and craters seem a lot more important. But beyond just the science, is there a more practical reason for all this?
Definitely. One word: resources. The moon could have resources that we really need here on Earth.
Like what? Space gold.
Haha, maybe someday. But the real prize right now is helium-3. It's an isotope that's super rare here on Earth, but it's a lot more common on the moon. And it could be a total game changer for energy production. We're talking clean, safe, almost limitless energy.
Wait, are you saying the moon could help solve our energy crisis?
It's a possibility worth exploring for sure. And who knows what other resources we might find as we keep exploring. Rare earth elements for advanced technology, water ice in those craters that are always in shadow of the moon could become a vital resource hub for humanity. And don't forget about the inspiration factor.
What do you mean by that?
Seeing these private companies achieve things that people thought were impossible, it shows us what we're capable of, our drive to explore and push boundaries. That's a powerful message, especially for the younger generation.
I get it. It's like that feeling you get watching a rocket launch. That sense of awe and possibility
Yes.
that makes you believe we can overcome any challenge.
Exactly. With Blue Ghost leading the way, who knows what amazing discoveries are waiting for us in the future.
This is truly incredible stuff, but we focused a lot on the potential benefits. What about the downsides? Sending missions to the moon is risky and expensive. What kind of challenges do these private companies face?
Well, space is a tough place. There's no room for error. One tiny mistake can lead to disaster. These companies are constantly pushing the limits of technology, and that always comes with some level of risk.
High stakes for sure. What else?
Staying ahead of the game is another big challenge. The technology for lunar exploration is always evolving, and these companies have to innovate to stay competitive. It's not just about getting to the moon, it's about staying there and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So it's a constant race to innovate and get better. And what about the financial side of things? We all know space exploration is expensive. How are these private companies handling the costs?
That's a key question. They need to secure funding, attract investors, and find ways to make their ventures commercially viable. Teaming up with government agencies like NASA is huge, but they also need to explore other ways to generate revenue, like space tourism or resource extraction.
Sounds like a tough balancing act. Pushing the boundaries of science while making sure everything is financially sustainable. But it's not just about the technology and the money, right?
You're right. As more countries and companies get involved with lunar exploration, we need to look at the bigger picture. We need to set clear guidelines and protocols to make sure the development of the moon is responsible and sustainable. It's a resource we all share, and we need to work together to protect it.
So international cooperation and responsible stewardship are essential for the future of lunar exploration.
Absolutely. The last thing we want is a free-for-all on the moon with everyone fighting over resources and territory. We need to learn from our mistakes here on Earth and approach lunar development with a sense of shared responsibility.
That makes a lot of sense. We need to ensure that exploring the moon benefits all of humanity, not just a few. But with all these challenges and complexities, what do you see happening in the next 10 years of lunar exploration? What's your prediction?
I think we're on the verge of a golden age of lunar exploration. We'll see more frequent missions, more ambitious experiments, and maybe even the first permanent lunar outposts. Imagine scientists living and working on the moon, doing research that's simply impossible from Earth.
Wow, that sounds like something out of science fiction. But who knows? Maybe science fiction is about to become reality.
Exactly. And with private companies involved, the pace of innovation is just going to keep increasing. We could see breakthroughs in things like resource utilization, space-based manufacturing, even lunar tourism.
Now that's a thought that really gets the imagination going. Imagine taking a vacation to the moon, walking on its surface, looking back at Earth.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing.
It really is mind-boggling, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. And let's not forget about all the scientific discoveries that are waiting for us. The moon still holds many secrets, and the next 10 years of exploration will be vital in unlocking them.
It's an incredible time to be alive, watching this new era of lunar exploration unfold. But for now, let's bring it back down to Earth, or should I say, back to Blue Ghost. What are some of the key takeaways you hope our listeners will remember from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is that lunar exploration is no longer just for governments. Private companies are showing that it's possible to achieve great things in space with determination, innovation, and a bit of that entrepreneurial spirit. It's a sign of what's to come, and I'm personally really excited to see what the future holds.
Me too. It reminds us that the sky is no longer the limit and that human ingenuity has no bounds. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's not forget about the amazing mission happening right now. Blue Ghost is out there on the moon, collecting data, capturing images, and paving the way for future explorers. It's a remarkable achievement, and it's just the beginning.
I totally agree. Blue Ghost is a symbol of this new era of lunar exploration, and it's an inspiration to us all.
Absolutely. And with that, I think we've covered a lot today. We've explored the science, the technology, the challenges, and the possibilities of this new lunar frontier. Okay, so we've got these incredible missions going on right now, really pushing the limits of what we can do on the moon. But I'm curious, where do we go from here? What does the future hold for lunar exploration?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And it feels like the possibilities are endless. I mean, think about it. With companies like Firefly making moon landings more affordable and accessible, we could see a huge increase in scientific activity on the moon. More rovers, more experiments.
Maybe even like the first lunar research outpost?
Yeah.
I mean, we've already got robots driving around on Mars.
Yeah.
A moon base, that doesn't sound so crazy anymore, does it?
No, not at all. And with those outposts, we could start thinking about, a more permanent human presence on the moon. Scientists living and working up there doing research that's just impossible to do from Earth. It's pretty exciting to think about.
That's a pretty wild picture you're painting. It'd be like a whole new chapter in human history unfolding right in front of us.
Yeah.
But it also brings up some big questions, don't you think? Like, who gets to go? Who decides what happens on the moon?
You're absolutely right. Those are crucial questions. As we go further into space, we have to ask ourselves, what are our goals? What are our responsibilities? How do we make sure that lunar exploration benefits everyone, not just a select few?
It's a conversation we need to have now, as we're entering this new era of lunar exploration. It's not just about the science and the tech, it's about ethics and philosophy too.
Exactly. We have to be aware of the impact our actions have, both on the environment and on society. The moon is a resource we all share, a celestial wonder that belongs to all of humanity. It's our job to make sure its exploration is done responsibly and sustainably.
Well said. So it sounds like the next chapter in lunar exploration will be as much about philosophy and ethics as it is about rockets and robots. We'll need to use all of our collective wisdom and ingenuity to navigate this new frontier successfully.
Absolutely. The future of lunar exploration, and really the future of humanity's relationship with space, depends on our ability to embrace both the opportunities and the challenges that come with it. It's a future full of promise and uncertainty, but one thing is for sure, it's going to be an incredible ride.
It certainly sounds like it. This whole conversation has been a real eye-opener. For our listeners out there, what are some of the key things you hope they take away from our deep dive today?
I think the most important takeaway is that we're at a turning point. Lunar exploration is no longer just the domain of governments. Private companies are showing that it's possible to do amazing things in space with ingenuity, determination, and a bit of that entrepreneurial spirit. It's a sign of things to come, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds.
Me too. It's a reminder that the sky is no longer the limit, and that human ingenuity knows no bounds. To everyone listening, keep your eyes on the skies, because the era of lunar exploration is just getting started.
And who knows what incredible discoveries await us?
That's a great question to leave everyone pondering. This has been The Deep Dive, your guide to the most fascinating and thought-provoking ideas out there. Until next time, keep exploring.